Welcome everyone to our webinar today, Customer Talk, how we improved end-user experience with Service Desk. Today our presenters will be Derek Potras, Manager of ITSM Sales here at CareWorx, and we will also be joined by Karen Juday, Director of IT Customer Service with the University of Southern California. Without further ado, I will pass the presentation to Derek.
Thanks for the intro, Renita. I just want to start out by thanking everyone for joining Karen and I today. We understand how difficult it is to find an hour in the calendar these days, so we promise to be mindful of your time and jam as much value into the next 45 minutes as we can, so you can walk away from today's session feeling your time was used wisely. With that being said, let's take a look at the agenda for today's session. What we're going to do here is we've prepared the webinar to be about a 40-minute runtime. I'm going to begin today's webinar by reviewing some of the key drivers for leveraging a partner to provide Service Desk and what we're seeing as industry trends. The next section is going to have Karen Juday, as I mentioned, the Director of IT Customer Service with the University of Southern California. She's going to discuss with us today what her help desk looked like about a year ago, sort of the pains that she had at that time, and really the benefits that she's seen by bringing in a partner to help with her Service Desk delivery model. After that discussion with Karen, we felt it would be valuable to provide you with some key questions to ask and important mistakes really to avoid when selecting a Service Desk partner in order to ensure success. What we're going to do is just wrap up with a brief overview of who CareWorx is and what we offer, so everyone on the call has a quick understanding of that. And as mentioned, at the end, just leave that 10 minutes to address any questions that come up. So, is Service Desk critical to your business? Right? And that's a question really I want to start with, because I think the answer for most companies across the industry, and across sectors is yes. And, we live in a world today that's always connected, where we want instant service, right? Anytime, anywhere. And that puts a lot of pressure on IT organizations, and specifically, right, the front lines, to not only always be on, but be extremely effective. And to deliver an extremely effective and always on sort of 24/7 service to your end users and customers is not only difficult, but it can also be really costly. So, what we've seen early on in 2017 is a lot of the companies that we work with and the research that we've done in the industry, over 250 employees, they're actually allocating less resources internally on their help desk. And what we found last year when we look at the customers we worked with, as well as, again, industry in doing some research, 2016 was the year that more companies than ever extended services to a third party to deliver level 1 support to their staff and customers. One of the big trends that we're seeing is companies are no longer willing to invest in offshore solutions for this service just to save a few dollars. They're really focusing in on the value of the service and what they're getting out of it. So I thought some drivers for partnering on Service Desk would be good to cover. We hear these a lot. We did some research within the industry. What we hear and what comes up a lot is, are you considering hiring more full-time employees, right? And this arises a couple ways. Sometimes as turnover, and the average turnover in IT is about every 18 months or so. So you do see a lot of churn. Or as the load increases, right? As more and more is demanded of us, obviously the pressure rises, and we feel like maybe we need to staff more to take on that. And as well, we have organizations growing. So as the organization grows, the needs grow, and the emphasis on Service Desk becomes more and more. The difficulty is finding people that are customer service focused and technical. And to fill level 1 positions can really be challenging. And then there's the issue of training them, not only initially on the knowledge base and the organization and the types of environment that you deal with, but as well the ongoing training and keeping them tooled up. Another big trend we're seeing is companies searching for cost savings. Obviously, that's always high on the C-level and the executive suite. And the competition in today's economy is fiercer than ever, and IT organizations globally are sort of searching for the strategic methods to drive out cost, time and effort. At the same time, they're trying to increase the overall customer service and support experience. So many organizations are becoming laser focused on their core business and activities that are required to make them successful in the current competitive landscape. It is well known that outsourcing business processes and certain IT operations has become a significant trend over the last several years. In fact, Bruce Caldwell, who's a Gartner analyst, one of the principal analysts with Gartner, believes that companies can generate anywhere upwards of 20 to 30% cost savings on internal operations through partnering with a third party for service. So that can represent a substantial savings to an organization, which cannot be easily ignored. Some of the other drivers that we see are agent retention issues, and especially, and Karen will talk about it here in a moment, with higher ed specifically, we see a lot of seasonal employees, where you'll have students sort of managing that level one, but they're students, so they're there, first and foremost to go to school, get their degree. And what happens in some cases is we sort of man our front lines with students. Exams come, things like that. What happens is their availability gets shortened and really cut off. So we really see, if that's a situation that a lot of higher ed is dealing with, and we see it in the marketplace, then it's a good place to stick in a service desk to help with that. The other one is promoting from within and organic growth, which is awesome for the company, but it leaves the service desk, in a tough situation. So what we mean by promoting within, we see a lot of great level ones get promoted and move to level 2 or level 3 or pulled into projects. And then you're sort of left with, one of the earlier bullet points about issues with resource hiring and training. And then when we see that and related to it, is your staff getting sidetracked by end users resulting in delayed projects, right? So what we see is if there's too much demand on level 1, it starts creeping over into level 2 and 3. And starts to hurt some of the project or business-driven initiatives that those teams are working on. And the other thing is, in partnering, you're really shifting some of the capital expenses to offer operating expenses as well. So what I'd like to do at this point is, we thought it would be valuable for everyone attending today to actually hear from a real-world case. So I'd like to introduce you to Karen Juday. As I mentioned, she's the ITS Customer Service Director with the University of Southern California. And Karen has great experience. Karen spent 21 years actually in information technology at Ford Motor Company. She also worked for 13 years at Central Michigan University as the IT manager for customer relationship management and web development with the University of Southern California for 4.5 years now, starting as the senior manager of learning environments and for the past 18 months as the director of IT customer service. So, Karen, I guess the first question that would be good maybe to address for the group, sort of set the stage, maybe you could describe what your help desk looked like a year ago before bringing in a partner to help you with that.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for the introduction. And just to give everybody some context before I talk about the help desk, USC has about 44,000 students, 4,200 faculty, and about 14,500 staff members. So that's the internal community. And then, of course, as a university that's located downtown Los Angeles, we have a lot of interactions with the outside world as well. We have multiple campuses in California and across the U.S., but our two main campuses are downtown Los Angeles. So our central IT service desk supports things like account setups and password changes, security and systems access, network connectivity, enterprise applications like email, telephone and data services, financial business systems, and some desktop support. And our help desk staff includes a manager, 9 full-time agents, and 25 to 30 part-time student workers. The team handles about 100,000 calls and 28,000 emails per year. So that's just to give you an idea of roughly of our size. So about a year ago, our frontline team was working Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 5 p.m. To cover those weekend hours, we had a full-time staff member and 2 student workers that were scheduled to work 2 4-hour days. And then the full-time staff member had to be off on a weekday to make up for the hours they worked on the weekend. This was a rotating schedule among the staff. So, and on every week we would have a day where we were short-staffed.
It sounds like with that volume, you may have had many pain points at that time, but can you tell us maybe the top 3 pain points for you at that time when you started, maybe looking for some help and some partners to help out?
Sure. So, probably the biggest pain point was not really on my group, but it was on our 24/7 operations center. So during the off hours, when we were not staffed on the front line, those calls rolled over to the operations center, who was also responsible for monitoring systems, server maintenance, incident management for any major service outages. And the frontline calls coming to them after hours and on the weekends just added a burden, which kept them from being able to perform their primary duties. And then, corollary to that is that the customer satisfaction with the after-hour service was quite a bit below that of our primetime service. To be fair, that's because the operations center couldn't really provide the same level of service because of their other duties. And then finally, tying up one of my full-time staff members on the weekends left us short-staffed during the week. So I've already mentioned that, but the call volumes are highest Monday through Friday, and sort of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is really our peak call time. So having someone out on a weekday put a lot of pressure on everyone else who was there, and also led to more abandoned calls and longer wait times for the customers.
No, excellent. That gives us a good picture. Could you give us an idea of the opportunity cost of those pain points you just outlined, and what you think was being affected the most?
Well, I think, like I mentioned, the biggest impact really was on the operational effectiveness of the operations center. By answering frontline calls instead of being able to proactively monitor systems and services, there were some lost opportunities and maybe even some outages that resulted in that because they couldn't be eyes on glass paying attention to what they were responsible for. And then, of course, also very important is the fact that we had degraded customer service during those off hours, and that we were short-staffed during the week in order to, accommodate the weekend hours.
So, I started having some pains, and then, you went to the market to sort of look for some solutions. Can you give us an idea of sort of what that looked like, your journey of looking at solutions to overcome some of those issues you mentioned?
So prior to hearing about CareWorx, I was looking at a model of, hiring additional student workers or full-time staff members to cover 24/7, because my ACIO had made it clear that my frontline team needed to start covering that in order to free up the operations center. So I would have had to add quite a few additional resources to cover 24/7, because I was really only covering Monday through Friday first shift and a couple of extra hours beyond that. And we did that by off-shifting people. But budget constraints for salary plus the challenge of adding headcount were real obstacles. And those of you in higher ed can probably relate to that. It's very hard to add headcount. So that was going to be a challenge to build that case.
So then comes, the time to sort of bring in a third party. And, one thing we hear from our customers all the time is sort of that, that culture shift of providing services solely internally to moving to bringing in a third party help desk solution. Sometimes that can be cumbersome for some. How would you describe your onboarding, with CareWorx and the overall sort of transition?
I attended a webinar like this one about a year ago, and then I liked what I heard, so I had a follow-up call with CareWorx to talk about options, and I really liked the service model and the fact that CareWorx is based in North America. Also, I didn't anticipate as much resistance from my full-time staff because I wasn't, replacing anybody. I was really extending the service to hours that they weren't staffed to cover. So we started out with a pilot just for one semester. We looked at the fall semester of 2016 as our toe in the water. Let's just see how this goes. But from the very beginning, we've been really happy because CareWorx has always operated as a partner. We gave them an initial set of knowledge articles for our most common types of calls and provided an initial training session. And from that point on, they have shared that information and any new knowledge articles that we need to share with them. They just pass that along to the staff. They've done all the training of any additional staff that they've added to the team. And they've been very flexible about meeting with us for discussions, for looking looking at statistics, for training, knowledge transfer, anything really that we felt a need to discuss with them. They've been very flexible. And of course, it wasn't, smooth as silk. We had some bumps in the beginning, but we learned very quickly, and it was always a very collegial working relationship. And we were able to work through any of the bumps and bruises and get things on an even keel very quickly.
Excellent. What are some of the key features Service Desk has brought to your organization? And I guess, were there any additional benefits that you saw that you weren't really expecting out of the gate?
The key thing and the main driver, of course, was to extend the coverage of my frontline team to 24/7. So they enabled me to do that without having to add headcount. And it's not just an answering service. It's the fact that it's technically skilled resources who were able to resolve a significant percentage of our customer issues in that first call. We were also able to reallocate the weekend student coverage to evenings instead of the weekends, and we also freed up our full-time staff to work only Monday through Friday, and we actually shortened our hours to end at 6 p.m. So we were able to squeeze more of our most skilled employees into those peak call times. Then finally, CareWorx has really been flexible when our evening students don't show up. They've been very flexible about picking up the extra hours. So, student workers can be unreliable, but CareWorx is always there, and that's been a wonderful safety net for us. And then a side benefit that I guess I had in the back of my mind, but it's going to move more to the forefront. Being in Los Angeles, we think a lot about disaster recovery, and having a third party who is located elsewhere geographically is a great benefit for business continuity and disaster recovery, knowing that they're already up to speed on our protocols and our services, that we know that we're going to make them part of our business continuity disaster recovery plan.
Yeah, excellent. It's a great point. So how does your organization go about rating customer satisfaction? That's always sort of the end goal is, to keep satisfaction levels high and improve them. Can you tell us how CareWorx Service Desk affected your customer sat compared to what it was before implementation?
Actually, we measure that, and we pay pretty close attention to it. So we use ServiceNow for our ticketing system for customer issues and requests. And we enter a case in ServiceNow for every call we receive, and that's also, CareWorx has extended that capability to be 24/7. So out of around 3,900 or 4,000 after hours and weekend calls since we started with our partnership, CareWorx has resolved or deferred more than 65% of those away from our operations center, who used to take those calls. It may not seem like 65% is much, but we've given CareWorx absolutely no access to any of our systems so far. So they're doing that with no access to anything other than our knowledge articles. We use a 5-point Likert scale to measure customer satisfaction, and the ServiceNow system actually automatically sends surveys to customers once their tickets are closed. So I'm able to see, sort of by group, what the customer satisfaction scores are that are coming back. So just to give you an idea, the average customer satisfaction with our daytime service is 4.59 on a 5-point scale. With our operations center, it's 4.23. And that's also the average customer satisfaction for our entire IT organization. CareWorx is giving us a customer satisfaction score of 4.36. So significantly better than what customers were experiencing with the operations center. And we think that that could improve significantly when we're able to give them system access to actually go in and directly make changes, change passwords, and help folks directly.
Yeah, that's excellent. A lot of that with yourself, with a lot of our customers, it's sort of, again, that partnership and that trust, right? So as that trust starts to get into place, then customers do provide us more access, so we're able to extend that help and expand it. So I'm glad you brought that up. Are there any key considerations that you'd offer to others, in your situation? We've got a lot of people on the call today that may be looking for solutions. And as they look for solutions, are there any best practice advice based on your experience maybe you could share? I think that would be valuable.
Well, so, the one I just mentioned, I think one of the biggest challenges has been that we have not been able to provide access to CareWorx to any of our systems so far. So this limits their ability to assist our customers. To the extent that you can give them access and provide them with your knowledge and your procedures, they can handle a higher percentage of the frontline calls. Also, I would say just stay in close contact. We meet weekly and talk about anything that may have come up, any new launches that are on the horizon, any major incidents. We share all our alerts with them. So we stay in very close contact and keep the lines of communication open, and that has helped immensely. We've been very satisfied with their level of service and with their partnership approach.
I just want to thank you for being so open and candid. I think, to have these sessions and have it from a customer perspective as opposed to, the solution provider sort of just talking about themselves, I think really resonates. So really appreciate you taking the time to jump on and do this with us. It's certainly appreciated, and I'm sure the people joining the webinar appreciate it. I thought what we could do now is I've put together sort of two sections, and what I'm going to do is sort of the 5 largest mistakes that we see, but also the industry recognizes when you're selecting a service desk provider. The second thing that we'll go over is really the top questions to ask a potential service desk provider, right? And what you want to make sure you get out in front of. So, outsourcing your help desk certainly can appear to be the easy answer for reducing cost, improving service levels, but there can also be a darker side, right, to outsourcing. So there are significant challenges to finding the right vendor. And really, it's about ensuring a smooth transition and understanding the expectations and true costs. So how do you make sure you're going to gain the benefits of bringing in a service desk partner and avoid the pitfalls is really, the question to ask. And we've done the research, drawn from our own experience. What we wanted to do is sort of bring you our top 5 list of considerations and mistakes that we see and the industry sees. So one is, locking your company into a multi-year contract with termination fees. Time and time again, companies enter an agreement with an outsourcing provider and then discover later that they're sort of stuck paying for high prices and potentially subpar services. And there was nothing they could do short of forking over exorbitant fees in order to terminate the contract. So just make sure to negotiate flexibility, potentially an out clause that was not going to hurt your bottom line. The second one is really allowing the service desk provider to define the SLAs. You really don't want to be in that position where you're being sort of forced into a boilerplate. It sounds obvious, but it's common, for companies to defer to that boilerplate SLA without customizing it to their own individual needs. And if the outsourcer isn't flexible enough to customize their offering according to your needs, you sort of have to ask yourself, what else are they going to be inflexible about? So make sure you're actively involved in setting your own SLAs, customized to the needs of your business. Choosing based on price as the determining factor. We've all heard that adage, but in this marketplace, it's very true. Today's business climate, price has taken more of a predominant role in companies' decision-making processes. It might be all right when you're comparing PCs, but outsourcing is such a multifaceted service. It needs to be a partnership like we've been talking about between two companies coming together. So the lowest price should be seen in the service desk space usually as a red flag. There's a few things to look for. Often the lowest price company doesn't understand the full extent of work required. So they haven't done enough due diligence to know how to properly support you. That's why they're coming in low. The other is planning, like they don't plan to provide great service. Sort of their SLAs, you're going to get mediocre service. Or they plan to make up for it. We see this a lot when we work with a new customer coming from an incumbent, is the company makes up for it with extra charges, right? So if it seems too good to be true, it's that old adage, it probably is. The other one here is paying on a per user or device basis and not on usage. You really want to align with a partner that's going to basically set up the service based on your usage. And usage is going to change, and the education sector is a great one as Karen talked about, sort of the staffing times and peak times and the peaks and valleys. You don't want a constant price across those, or you're really going to be shortchanging yourself. And then the last is not choosing a provider with a well-defined IT service delivery model where really Service Desk is all they do. Because if you're looking at potentially extending, as Karen mentioned, providing more and more access and potentially partnering or getting a co-managed service provider in there, you want to look at your long-term goals as well and see if that provider can provide those down the road for you. I'll just put these up here. I won't go through everyone in detail. Like I said, we're going to send these along, but these are the questions that we've compiled that I think would put you in a real good position if you're going through this process. So, one, how long is the contract and what does it cost to get out of it? Right? Are your SLAs fully customizable? What's your turnover rate? Right? Having a sense of how fast an outsourcer turns over employees will provide a real good estimate of the general experience level of the help desk professionals your employees can expect to encounter each time they're calling into them. Where are your service desk operations located? And Karen mentioned, she really enjoyed the fact that CareWorx in North America. We're actually based up in Ottawa, Canada as our headquarters, and our service desk, a large majority of is in Prince Edward Island on the East Coast here in Canada. So if you really want North American-based services, then you need to know where all the locations and where all the service is coming from. A lot of times you'll see service providers position North American service business hours, and then after hours, it's going offshore. What kind of reports do you provide to enable transparency? This is very important because if there's no accountability or transparency, you can't gauge how well the service is going. We talked about customer service levels and customer satisfaction results. Who are your account managers and escalation contacts? It sounds pretty simple, but my recommendation is actually get it in the contract, who your escalation contacts are. This is a personal service, right? It's a culture change. It's two companies sort of merging. So you really want to have that personalized service and be able to have a name, a number of someone that you can reach out to that you trust. What tools do you use to service your end users and customers? You should be looking at the service provider really as a trusted advisor, but they should also be in a position where they've got the best of breed tools. You don't want to be going backwards, and that service provider should at least have better tools than what you currently have in place for managing your environment. The other is offering flexibility in service desk applications and ticketing systems. So Karen mentioned they use Service Desk, right? And some companies have a one solution fits all, or service desk providers will say you have to use our system. And the problem with that is if you're only doing co-services, so you're only outsourcing a component, you can't expect to change your whole IT infrastructure and service management tools to do that. How will you capture our unique information, and how long will it take to get up to speed? That's a really important one to know, because this one gives you an idea of how vested they are to onboard you properly and get the proper knowledge base so they can handle the calls that come through. What kind of additional projects can you handle? That's on the last slide as well, is you don't want a one-trick pony that's only doing one thing. If they can expand the services and help you out down the road, as I mentioned, there's a lot of turnover. About every 18 months, we see IT personnel turning over. So we do a lot around just supplementing in those times of need, right, to fill gaps. And then what percentage of your customers renew, right? That gives you obviously a real good indication of the quality of the service, is their renewal rates. So we sort of flipped the presentation around. What we wanted to do was talk about the story, hear from Karen, from a real world experience instead of talk about who we are and what we do. I think it's important for you to know, but we just wanted to touch on it here towards the end. So CareWorx is a top 100 global MSP. We're actually ranked 28th in the world. We're based here in Ottawa, Canada, as mentioned, and we specialize in ITSM and Service Desk. As well, we can do straight through from level 1 all the way through to level 3 support. So really when we specialize in 24 service desks, service management, IT automation, and technology solutions. So we really help customers assess their existing infrastructure and situation and then deploy new infrastructure or services to help them better manage that environment on an ongoing basis. What we do, pretty simple, 24/7 service desk. That's our enterprise service desk. Gives you the ability to hand off frontline technical support and extend the capabilities of your in-house team. Co-managed services. So what we do here is we really allow your internal IT department to extend their capabilities through a partnership approach. So you handle what you want to do and what you're good at, and then where you don't have core competencies in-house, you can lean on us to help in those areas. Managed ITSM is, Karen mentioned ServiceNow. We actually use that on our team, on our service desk team and operations team. We've built out an instance that we call Grand Central. That's built on ServiceNow. So think of it as ServiceNow as a service, or if you put it into what it might be like in the marketplace, think of what Microsoft's done with Office 365. We've really done that with ServiceNow, just making it as a service available online and easy to get into. And then the last is obviously, because we do so much to help our customers support the infrastructure, we also provide infrastructure, so hardware and software to do that. So I'll just put up these numbers, not going to talk to them, but I think it's important for you to know that, we've been in the business a long time. We manage, a couple thousand customers and over 1 million end users across our different service offerings. So when we talk about IT transformation and, what we do day in, day out, this is really a good depiction of what we do. So this is based on Gartner's maturity model. And it's really looking at when we work with the customer and we onboard them, where they're at in this maturity model. Are they doing a lot of reactive service, right? Is it technology focused with ad hoc tools and processes? And we really work from left to right on helping the organization mature in that manner across all our different services, so whether it's service desk or managed services. I thought I'd just put a couple bullet points up around the service desk service itself. It's always good to practice what you preach. So when you look at the service desk offering, some of the main bullet points that stand out to our customers is we do have a self-service portal. So if they don't have an ITSM solution in place that they're happy with and they may be looking at other options, we can have a self-service portal designed for their end users to go in, submit incidents, look at incidents, track them. And really give them a great end user experience. As Karen mentioned, we're all North American-based support. So we've got offices in Ottawa, we've got offices in London, in Orangeville, and Prince Edward Island. And then we're really on a model for service desk of pay per usage, not per user. So especially in higher ed, but across all of our customers, the service requirements change. Sometimes that can be monthly, quarterly. Organizations are growing, contracting, so we can move that bar around to make sure you're only paying for what you're using, and we don't ask for long-term contracts. We do have bilingual support if required in English, French, and Spanish. And we open up a number of mechanisms to contact our support through phone, chat, email. We've got awesome tools for remote control, remote assistant, screen sharing. We talked about 24/7, and in Karen's case, that was really sort of filling those gaps. We also offer business day support, so if you want to shorten that. But what we found, our experience is having the 24/7 available, and the cost of our service doesn't really differ between business day and opening it up 24/7. What you see is by having it 24/7, a lot more consistent flow within the group because people aren't waiting until the service desk opens to get tickets in. They can just put them in this world that we live in when they're experiencing the issue. And the other thing is guaranteed service level agreements that we build with you. So we don't say, here's what it is. You got to map to it to say, what do you want to see? And then we map to what you're looking for. So we've got some samples that we use. If a customer doesn't have an idea out of the gate, but what we want to do is understand your existing customer service experience and then always start out by improving that. So sometimes customers will take steps, right, and move from left to right here and improving over time the service level experience as well based on where their current experience sits. But I just wanted to give you a feel for some of the samples, but the idea here is to take bits and pieces from each, customize it, and make it your own SLA. What I'd like to do at this point is open it up to questions. I will just reiterate, we will be sending a follow-up email. We've recorded the session today, so we'll get that out to everyone. We'll also get, as Renita mentioned at the top of the call, the Starbucks gift cards. So maybe when we're sending the content out, you can have a coffee and flip through those. And then we'll include 2 documents. One is the 5 mistakes to avoid, and the other is the questions to ask if you are entertaining a service desk provider. So at this point, I'll open the floor to any questions. So if you have any questions, just type them in the chat, and Karen or I can address them for you. So we just had a question come in. It was a little bit earlier, so I addressed that on where the team's located. So we're all in North America. Actually, all of our offices are up here in Canada for Service Desk. It asks, one of the questions that came through, do you need access to our central systems? So Karen mentioned this a little bit. We don't need access. It's really what access do you want to provide us? And on top of that, what do you want us doing at the service desk? A lot of times our service moves outside of level 1 into level 1.5 and sometimes 2. So all we need is the knowledge base and access to the systems by you providing it, and we can usually handle a lot through our service desk from that perspective. Do you offer pilot programs? Another good question. So because this is such a personal service, right, and sort of a culture shift, I think that's important, and that's why one of the biggest mistakes companies make is jumping into a long-term contract because maybe they like the price, or maybe the salesperson was good and did a real good job in the front end. But the idea with Service Desk is to get to know each other. So pilots are great if you're thinking about it like Karen did, and then you can move into locking in a long-term contract when you sort of get through the honeymoon phase, right? So great question there. And one of the other questions, can you change programs once signed up? So I sort of just alluded to it, right? What we want to do is get to know the end user, get to know the customer, and then on the other side, you need to get to know CareWorx or whoever the service desk provider you're plugging in. So a lot of times the programs do change over time. Sometimes companies are expanding, sometimes they're contracting, or sometimes it's saying, look, we've got a hole here, can you guys plug it? So they're certainly flexible, and I think that's a great point to mention is, when you're putting this in place is make sure that the contract is flexible, so you can go either way on that. So I think that's it for questions. Want to be mindful of everyone's time. I said we'd be running at about 40 minutes with the 10-minute Q&A, so we're at 45 now. So I just want to thank everyone again for your time. We really appreciate it. We'll be getting the email out before the end of the week so that you have that. And again, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.